the silver plan, and the HMO and the PPO is comparable to the gold plan. But there again, there we go with some miscommunication there, because that's really not true. It's similar as it relates to premiums, maybe, on one side, but it's certainly not similar as it relates to coverages. Because really, when you look at it, the health and wellness benefit plan is actually, coverage-wise, more comparable to the gold plan. So, and the HMO and PPO employees, if they want to stay even remotely close to what they have as far as coverage goes, then we're going to be required to go to gold, but we're looking at a huge increase in cost. So here's how, and I'm an HMO employee. If I go to gold, which will give me, basically the same coverages that I have now, here's my cost. Total cost for insurance would be $8,163.92. That'll cost me $680.33 a month. That's a over $200 a month increase. I just can't afford it. There's just no way that my family can sustain that. I mean, we just can't do it. And it's not that I don't want to do it. I just can't. I'm already working 3 and 4 part-time jobs. I'm already working my days off. I'm already spending tons and tons of time away from my family. I just can't do it. I can't afford it. There is nothing else to cut on what I make. So the $8,163.92 per year cost of insurance underneath this new gold plan, take the 2% off. 2% of my salary is $915.50. With that increase of 2%, that means that my health insurance costs are going up $1,507.18 a year, which equals out $125.60 per month. Now, you say, that's $125 a month. Well, that's $125 a month. That's a lot of money to some of us. To some people, it's not. But to some of us, it is. I got a wife and 4 children. I don't have any extra cost. I don't have, I live in a regular middle-class house. As a matter of fact, my mortgage, and I don't mind telling you because the public knows everything about us anyway. They know what we make and all that, so I don't care who knows. But my mortgage is $700 a month. So now my health insurance cost at this plan will cost as much as my mortgage. That is a huge, huge issue for people like me. So you say, okay, it's $1,500. Well, you say, well, last year we implemented this new pay plan, and everybody got $1,500 increase in this new pay plan. Yeah, we did. Sure did. The problem with that was that what we lost was the money that we were getting paid for anything that we worked above our scheduled hours, which for most years would be 9 months at 9.5 hours and 3 months at 16.5, 17 hours, because we have what we call a short cycle. And you've heard it described as gap pay over the years and that kind of stuff. And that's as good a word to call it as anything, I guess. So with that $1,500, that completely wipes out what I got last year with this new health insurance plan. On top of that, I lost any money that I could make or that I would make with gap time. So that leads me to And I'll talk more about the gap time in just a minute because I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, and I think I probably already have. But more as it relates to the health insurance coverages, and one of the source of contention at our initial meeting was this biometric screening issue and the $50 surcharge if you don't comply. Well, I understand why the biometric screening is important. I understand why they're doing it across the nation. I do. I get it. I understand why it's important for screening sessions to be in place to try to help employees be healthier, to reduce cost. I understand all that. I really do. I get it. I don't even think it's a bad idea. I actually think it's a good idea. The problem I think we're all having with this is the $50 surcharge. As we, even in our meeting when we talked to the benefits coordinator, when asked about why not give employees, instead of making it forcibly, financially forcibly making employees comply, why not give employees an incentive? Because that's really what they're calling it. On the proposal, it's called an incentive. Well, the first part of the plan isn't really an incentive. You can call it an incentive, but just because you call it an incentive doesn't really make it an incentive. The reality of it is, if you're charging people, if you're forcing people financially to comply, then that's not voluntary. And so it's not an incentive. And that's the biggest source of contention with this biometric screening. There are other options out there, and even the benefits coordinator that came to our meeting said, in a lot of municipalities, in a lot of places, they give a $50, we'll just say, because we're talking about $50, a $50 decrease in premiums if they comply. So I think the argument here, and then the concern, there were two concerns with this thing, that being the first one, the forcibly, trying to force people to comply with this. The second thing is the not being able to understand, due to this communication gap that we receive, that we have, that the information that is gained through the biometric screening could in no way be used against the employee down the road as it relates to their employment. Now, I got an email back from Ms. Hollowell yesterday, and I certainly appreciate that. I appreciated her response to the email that I sent out to each one of you. And with her response to this issue, personally, I feel better because I think we have something now in writing that says the city won't even have access to that. It's being handled, the information is being handled through a third party. And so the city won't have access to it, therefore it can't be used against the employee as they get older, as their claims go up. Because, you can look at me, I'm getting a lot of gray hair these days. It happens. So personally, I feel better because of the written response. I think had that information been put out to us early, I think we might have had some different outcomes about this issue. So, that I honestly believe is an easy enough thing to fix. I really don't see this as being a super complicated issue. I don't think we gain a tremendous amount by forcibly, making people comply with this. And as I've spoken to several different insurance people in the industry, what I am being told is that the way that this system is usually implemented, it's implemented with voluntariness. And the way to get people to voluntarily do stuff is to give them some kind of incentive. And I don't think that's unreasonable, and I think that's going to be an easy enough fix. So with that said, I'll move on to the next issue. In Ms. Hollowell's response to my email, she mentioned several times about the issue at hand at the meeting being health insurance and the health insurance plans. It got brought up several times about what it would do as it relates to retention and those kind of things, and it's been said, well, that wasn't the forum for it. I understand. I do. I completely understand that may not have been the appropriate forum for that discussion, which is really why I'm here today before each of you, because I think this is the right place and the right forum for that discussion. Because all of this stuff is tied in together. It's really not just about health care. It's about health care. It's about the pay plans that have been implemented. It's about the rate in which we are losing officers and the cause of that. And so, so I hope that each of you will understand that in the police business we use the phrase totality of circumstances all the time. And I think that certainly applies here. I think we have to look at the totality of a culmination of things that have happened over the course of years that have led us to this point. And one of the things that have adversely affected us is the implementation of this new pay plan back last year or this year. I was on that retention committee. Chief Miller and Chief Boren asked me to be on that committee, and I was. And many of you were on there and know I was there. There were some heated conversations about that issue in those meetings, and those are good things to have. I think debate is good. I think that the more we can discuss stuff, the more we can listen to other people's ideas, the more we can come up with better solutions. But what has happened here is that a pay plan was implemented that takes out the gap pay I was talking about. So most of the police officers of the Columbus Police Department work a 6-and-3 schedule. And what that means is we work 6 days on and 3 days off. All of patrol works that except for motor squad and bicycle squad. Actually, I think bicycle squad works that as well. And then several units in investigative services, to include mine, and I'm a sergeant in the robbery and homicide unit. The guys in special operations, the drug guys, they work that schedule. ID, our CSI guys, they work that schedule. So what that does is it creates a work schedule where you're not going to work the 171 hours. You're going to work, sometimes you're going to work 9.5 hours less than that, and some months you're going to work 16.5 hours less than that, depending on how the cycle falls. That's the schedule that we work. It's the schedule with our manpower that the powers that be believe that that's what we have to have in order to cover the city and the calls and the beats, to give the citizens of this city the coverage and the services that they need and deserve. And so what that's done is you've taken, and I'll again use myself as an example, is you take a guy like me who's on call 3 out of my 6 days, subject to be called out any time of the night. If there's a murder in town, I'm going. I'm required to answer my phone. I'm required to respond. I personally feel I have a duty to not only respond and to work, but I also have a duty to my victims and to the citizens of this city to work that case or these cases as diligently as I can until we can come up with some kind of resolve. I don't think that we want to create a system where you say, Sergeant Deaton, go in, when you work your 8.5 hours, go home. Just hand it off to the next guy who's coming in. That's been tried in other places. It doesn't work because there's an information gap that you just can't relay through that process. So the alternative is, Sergeant Deaton, you work this thing until you can't, there's nothing else to do, and then you go home and you get a few hours rest and you come back and you start something else. And that's what we do. And so there are times where I may work 24 hours straight and then go home and sleep for 2 or 3 hours and then come back. And if something pops off, I may work another 24 hours straight. So with that, and again, I'm not the only one. There are several units, and I think that the city identified a certain amount of employees in the police department that falls under, you know, that's subject to be the case with. So underneath this new plan, what happens is, for the first 9.5 hours, they call me at home at 2 o'clock in the morning. The first 9.5 hours I work above my 170, my 100 and whatever hours I'm scheduled to work that month, I'm doing that for free. Now they would argue, you're not doing it for free because we gave you a $1,500 increase in your pay, which is $57 a pay period for me. Well, that's technically true. The problem is that with that increase in pay, doesn't equal out to what I lost in gap time money. It just doesn't equal out. So the other thing that causes, especially with an agency like ours where we're so short right now, and we've been short for a long time. We are unusually short right now, worst I've ever seen it. But here's what we used to do under the old pay plan when we had 8 beats open for the night. The commander for the next shift would come on the radio and say, are there any officers who want to work over 4 hours to the next shift? And I promise you, there are a lot of these young cats who love the police and love to be out in this community that jumped all over it because I was one of them. As a young patrol officer, it was a way for me to make some extra money to help support my family. And it was a way for me to further serve my community. So we would respond, 10-4, and they would allow us to work over 4 hours to help with increased call volumes, calls that we're holding, you know, issues that were coming up across the city, whether it be, you know, some kind of, you know, weather-related incidences or whatever. And so that's how we covered these open beats and the shortages that we had at that point. Well, here's what's happened with this pay plan that was implemented. That can no longer happen. It will not happen. And it's not happened. Because if you call an officer on the radio and say, hey, do you want to work over 4 hours? They're going to say, why? Why would I work over 4 hours? Because I'm not even getting paid until I work over a 9.5. So why would I work 4 hours for free? I'm going to get the same money whether I work the extra 4 hours or I don't. So now we've taken a solution to a problem, one solution to a problem, we've taken it off the table. Let me tell you something else that's happened with this pay plan to units like mine. And my unit specifically doesn't really have this option, but there are some units that do. What's happened is they've said, okay, well, if I'm not responsible for a shift, then when something happens, we get called out to a meth lab, and I got to work over. But then I'm going to adjust my schedule, and we're not going to work. If I'm working 8.5 hours over, then I'm not going to work tomorrow. So they just adjust their schedule. So what that's done is you've taken money in overtime away from officers who have been able to make that in years past. And you say, well, okay, you know, those are tough cuts. We got to make tough decisions. I think we all understand that. But here's the problem. When you take these guys and you don't allow them to work over like that, then there are drug dealers, robbers, rapists, some of the worst criminals in this city are out here running loose when you could have people sitting here working, trying to get these guys off the street. So there's a significant issue involved in that. And that I think that we've seen that since the implementation of that pay plan, we've seen the numbers go up. And the group that it's affected the most, and this is unheard of with the Columbus Police Department, ever since I've been there, we're seeing the middle group leave. You're seeing my group bail out for other opportunities. And that's unheard of. Usually when you got to my group, traditionally when you got to my years of service, hey, we were lifers. We're there. You could rely on us to stay the whole time. Well, that's not really the case now. You're seeing people with rank leave to go work in other places, whether it be other agencies, whether it be in the private sector. You're seeing your experience leave. And that is critical. That is critical. And I can't emphasize enough how important that is. So when we look at the repercussions of all this, what you've done is you've alienated this middle group. They'll say 17%. That's only 17% of CPD. That may be so. 17%. The problem is that's the 17% that's going to be moving up to the leadership positions of the Columbus Police Department as this large group that we have now in the DROP program are on the way out the door. It's my group that will be moving into those positions. If you start losing those guys, which we're doing, then that leaves you with the 5-year and less guys that won't even qualify for those positions to move in. And that's going to be detrimental to the police department. It's going to be detrimental to the city. It's going to be detrimental to the services we provide to the citizens of this city. And that is absolutely going to happen if we continue down this path.
Sergeant Deaton, if you could just close out your comments.
Okay. I certainly will do that. And I certainly haven't gotten to say all the things I would have liked to have said, but I hope I've gotten across that the health plans that we're proposing right now, the previous pay plan that we implemented already, and the new pay plan that I think y'all will vote on part of that today, sends us down a path where we're throwing money at the front end to the brand new guys because we're afraid to deal with the problem of compression because it's such a large number. I think we're all reasonable. Nobody that joined on with the police department expected to get rich. I think all we need is for the leadership of this city to say, you know what, we understand there's a problem, and there's no way we can come up with $19.2 million to fix compression today. I think we all understand that. I'm good with that. But we need a plan in place to start dealing with that issue. And if we had a plan in place to take small steps towards fixing the issue, then I think you will see an opportunity for people in my group to be the best recruiters the Columbus Police Department have ever had. Because if you really want to hire quality police officers, we're your best recruiters. We're the guys who can go out in the community and entice people to come to the Columbus Police Department because of the way we're being treated, because of our benefits, because of our pay. We're the best salesmen there are. These new young guys, they're in their 20s, they don't have families and stuff like that, and they're some of them, and so they're not quite there yet. But we are. So we're the best recruiters that we can have. But if you lose us, then, it causes a significant issue. In closing, just one little really interesting tidbit that I think, if you look at it, kind of sums up the issues we're dealing with right now. We had a recruiting video made. The Columbus Police Department had a really cool looking recruiting video made. I mean, it's high quality, it's high speed, it looks nice. It really does. I was impressed when I saw it. I was like, holy cow, that's cool. When you really stop and look at it, out of about 20 of the officers truly featured in that video, which is a year old, 9 of those officers are no longer employed with the Columbus Police Department. 9. 1 of them retired, 8 resigned to go elsewhere. So that's just an interesting little fact that I think kind of sums up kind of where we're at today. I hope that the council, the mayor, city manager, and the department heads will take this information into consideration and work with us. We're not trying to dump all the responsibility on you. We're offering to be part of the solution. But we got to be included in the process. So I hope that you'll take this information that you've heard today and that you've gotten through emails and conversations and consider, the path that we're going down with these issues. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Sergeant Dean. We appreciate you being here, and want to make clear we're not going to be making any decisions related to some of these issues on the health care plan today. In this council meeting, there will be a full discussion in the budget session that follows. Just a couple of things that may help alleviate some concern, and obviously we hear your frustration. It is a critical issue. We are frustrated as well. We'd like to resolve all the issues, obviously. If they were easily solvable, they would have been solved by now. A lot of it, as you know, compression doesn't happen overnight. It's taken decades. There's been other policies well-intended at the time that's not turned out to be beneficial. Unwinding those and changing the pay culture is very complex, and it's like anything, like a Rubik's Cube. When you start to move them around, it all starts to move. And so when you say is there a plan, yes, there is a plan, but all of these incremental steps that we're taking to adjust these decade-old, knotted, twisted ball of yarn that we now have are going to have these effects. And then we have to come in and find money to cure the effect. But just a couple of things. The law enforcement agencies in this community do have incredible public support, and they have the complete support of this council and of this mayor. In fact, we spend a great deal of time working on these issues with your command staff and talking about all these issues and where possible solutions lie. Regarding the process related to health care, and of course we could go on for very, very long, so I'll just touch on some of these. It used to be, even as late as 2 years ago, that because we're self-insured, we get these claims information in, and we have to assess them. So unlike, even though Blue Cross Blue Shield administers our claims, they're not our insurer. So unlike when you have an insurer that actuarially projects out and they predict your premiums, we really are extremely reliant on our claims. So we have to wait for claims year to come in before we can make some pretty decent projections as to, and we don't want to overshoot, obviously, because that means we're paying for things, we come in lower. But we want to be as accurate as we can possibly be and not have a big deficit at the end of the year, because that is troublesome for layoffs and things that we don't want to talk about. So usually that information is available so that we can give you what was given in April. It's usually not available to September, and that's right before open enrollment. And so really, as frustrating as this process is, the information that has been provided in the mayor's budget letter this time was actually the type of information that you normally would see the end of August, the beginning of September. So it was, 5 months early. But we wanted to lay it out there because it's changes, because it has financial impact, to give council some guidance as they make the big macro dollar decision related to the budget, how many millions are going to be, have to be earmarked, if you will, so that we have a responsible budget. They have to see the bigger plan in this case so they can make the macro decisions. Micro decisions to come later after more meetings and more hearings and so forth, and forums like the ones that have only just begun. So I think there's a little bit of a disconnect there with the frustration level, feeling like all the decisions will be made when council votes on the budget. It's more of the macro decisions, but yes, those macro decisions are being informed by the proposed plan that's out there that normally you wouldn't see until August or September. So if that sort of explains the process and beginning to get this feedback, because it is a different type of way we're going at it. You mentioned raises. It's not a raise, and I know that sounds like semantics, but it's important to you. You spend a lot of time speaking about it's not a raise. Since I've been in office, we haven't given a raise. I don't think we've given a raise since 2008, I believe. It's a cost of living adjustment. And a cost of living adjustment is just that. It's an adjustment in pay to offset increases. Could be groceries or fuel or whatever, but in this case, it's been insurance and pension and things of that nature. So you're right, it's not a raise. We have not represented it as being a raise. It could be that people not familiar with the term COLA, a cost of living, may think that's a raise, but it really is an offset of adjustments in the cost of living, which would include that. The gold plan, I know we've had a lot of forums, and I was at the police department on Friday for 2 meetings that was really not directly related to health care, but certainly that came up. And uniformly, the examples being used is a gold plan, and I think you made clear why you feel. And that is about a little over $2,400 impact in difference a year if you opt for the gold plan. The silver plan, however, is $145 a year increase. Still money, still important money, but drastically less than the gold plan. And Retha and those can explain so much better, but as they explained to me, to prepare me and some of the counselors in these emails and things to be able to respond, the silver plan is going to be most appropriate for those families that don't have chronic illnesses, are not suffering from something like a cancer treatment or something where you're going in regularly, perhaps a serious childhood disease where that child is having to go in regularly for a treatment and a costly treatment. If that is your family circumstance, then you would benefit from the gold plan because those are serious expenses and they're regularly incurred. If your family is more, quote, typical in the insurance actuarial world, which means that checkups and vaccines and the flu and the cough and the cold and sort of typical family circumstances, then the silver plan would be the best fit. So I just throw that out there for your future questions and forums and things, and certainly Retha and her staff are available for individual emails, and that'll be some of the discussion I'm sure Council has a little bit later on related to the surcharge. And actually the surcharge, and this is in the documentation, but I think is such a change, was somehow fixated on and created a great deal of frustration. The surcharge was an option. The other option was a $500 credit, and deductible. And so it's probable, I don't know, but it's probable that council will go with a $500 credit. But the purpose is our staff, our professional staff, has to propose the options that are being used by like communities and like entities, and to not withhold information from council. And as they'll be hearing later, the $50 surcharge is a way to go, and a lot of communities have it, and they do because it has a much higher response in people actually participating. So you may get an 80 or 90% participation rate with the surcharge, but only a 60% participation rate with the premium. But since this is new to us, and it's like betting on the Kentucky Derby, I'm not going to bet on what council would do, but probably going to go with the credit, would be my guess, but I don't know what they're going to do. And then see how that works and see what the participation is and, how it works for us, just my guess. But that was nothing more, and it was clearly stated in the documents it was an option for council's consideration. And what we don't want to have happen is for professional staff to know there's 3 or 4 ways or one or two ways for things to be done and only present one, because it looks like they're trying to force council's hand. Council's part-time. They aren't insurance experts. Some may be. Some may sell some insurance, but mostly they're not. And they're waiting for council to advise as to what the broader municipal and county community is doing. So I just wanted to throw that out there. And then as to the other subject, which is a whole other discussion in and of itself, and I'm available to speak with you, but the gap time is one of those tangled balls of yarn, and was talked about a lot. And I would just remind you and others, because we continue to talk about it. In fact, it was the meeting I had with CPD. The afternoon meeting went on for 2 hours and 45 minutes, was incredibly productive, and we actually stayed a little while longer with some folks that wanted to hang around and talked about some things. But I would just remind everybody, and we had a couple of councils serve on that commission, that there was a proposal. There were 30 people in CPD that were fairly reliant on gap time, which is, just to briefly explain, because the United States Supreme Court and the Federal Fair Labor Standards Act has provided that law enforcement agencies shall be paid with a salary, and that salary shall, in this instance, compensate them for 171 hours, whether you schedule them for 171 hours or not. And it's very akin to an administrative assistant in a business somewhere that's paid a salary, $30,000 for 40 hours of work. She may get an hour lunch a week, so she works 35 hours most weeks and goes home. But if her boss asks her to stay on Thursday and work 2 hours, she doesn't get an increase in pay. She doesn't get overtime. That's part of her 40 hours. She doesn't start to get overtime until she hits 40 hours. Same thing with law enforcement officers under the the Fair Labor Standards Act, is you don't begin to get overtime until you've reached the maximum of your salary, which is set at 171 hours, per pay period. So what we saw was there were these 30 positions that were getting gap time, and gap time can be, in some departments, it's well over $1 million a year. It has been in very recent past almost $2 million a year. That's a lot of compensation going to certain individuals, not by rank and not by longevity, but by assignment. Not even within division, but by assignment.
And work.
And well, everybody's working, hopefully, as hard as they possibly can, but given assignment, there could be a disparity of workload, no doubt. And so that's one of the things that ties up and has tied up millions of dollars that could have gone to a broader pay plan. So one of the things we had to do of the Rubik's Cube I was talking about is unwind that. And so because we could see the disparate effect it was going to have on those 30 people who, because of assignment, we're pulling down a good bit of gap time, what I proposed as mayor and public safety director was that those 30 positions be reclassified, because there's something unique about those positions that requires a workload that they're constantly being compensated through this system that council never voted on and isn't recognized by the Fair Labor Standards Act, but just by the rule of do has existed, I guess, since the 90s sometime. And there was the police department could not reach a consensus on that, because broadly, everybody, it's human nature pulling for their self-interest. Not everybody wanted those 30 people necessarily be reclassified because it might push you over somebody more senior or whatever. But I will say it's not off the table. It was a proposed solution, I guess a fairly novel solution that people hadn't thought about. But they continue to think about it, and I've posed it again. I proposed it the first time and felt it was necessary and supported it. I proposed it again when we were talking on Friday, and I would hope the Columbus Police Department would take a look at trying to build a broad consensus about that. We'd have to come here and get support among council. It would be a long discussion, but it would cure the issue, the effect that you've talked about. So that's part of the plan, that when you take a step forward to try and create the longevity plan we did, which was to begin compensating people by years of service, then we had this effect. Now we need to come in and see what we can do about possibly reclassifying. But you're right, the $19 million is most probably not going to come. And so we're going to have to do things incrementally. We are, this year, looking at a proposal that's come down in collaboration with the command staff at CPD. And, you know, we have to be relying on our law enforcement professionals to take a look at their critical needs and weigh serious matters and make proposals to us. And the proposal that came down was that the most urgent matter was recruitment and early year retention because of the training. And so that's the proposal that's been made this year. It's not the end. It's just something that we could see a funding source for that was in line with political commitments made previously under the OLOST. Council hasn't voted on that, but that was the objective. So just to tell you that I can't tell you how seriously we take this. We think about it all the time. And we know how important you are. You know, the Columbus Police Department is the highest funded department in the city, $40 million. And you've heard me say before, and I know it's a little solace, but the city of Columbus pays more per person for public safety than any other comparable city in the state of Georgia by far. $612 per person as compared to Savannah, which is $472 per person. So we take it seriously, we fund it. We've just, you know, got a little bit of a mess over these decades of various objectives that had unintended consequences. So we're going to continue to work on it, and with your command staff and with the broader commission and whatever else. It's one of the things we talked about Friday evening was getting with Major Freddie Blackman. He's going to get with some of the folks that were there, throwing out some of the ideas, including the reclassifications, including perhaps enhancing the increments related to the longevity and some other things we might be able to do. But I just want to assure you that we work on it all the time. And one other thing that I asked on Friday in both meetings was, and this is important, you know, we have had these increases in insurance, and we had to save the pension plan, which we did. You're only 71% funded, and now it's more 84% funded, and so we're making some great strides. But we can find no Columbus police officer that makes less net pay than they did in 2012, net take-home pay. So that would include the cost of living adjustments and so forth. And this is just for you to consider when you speak with Retha, if you choose a silver plan, if that fits for your family, with the $1,500 bonus that we'll be giving, hopefully, if council approves that, and the 2% COLA, hopefully, if council approves that, then you will continue to make more than you did the year before. And so that's sort of a broader, you know, a good bit more. I mean, off the top of my head, 900-something dollars more than last year. So that's how we're working it, and we welcome your emails and your continued, you know, input, because we take it seriously. So I hope this conversation is giving you a bit of solace. It doesn't cure all the problems, but we're trying to address it. So appreciate your time today.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. We'll head on into the city manager's agenda. Oh, yeah, excuse me. Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to ask council for a point of personal privilege. This really has to do with the budget, but due to time constraints, I've asked, I told you I was going to invite some of the local team administrators and coordinators to come and visit with us and share the impact of the youth fees that is being proposed in the budget, what it will do on their structure and the team league play and that kind of thing. I've been invited, and today we have with us David Miles, the general manager with Columbus Youth Soccer. If y'all would come on up, Richard Bryant, the District 8 Little League administrator, and Patty Roper, the District 8 assistant. If y'all would come on up and just take a few minutes and share what you think the impact would be on your operations and the
Okay.
facilities.
Okay, let's get a motion. We'll take that as a motion to amend the agenda to add, we've got a motion by Counselor Allen. That'll be a second by Counselor Huff to amend the agenda to allow discussion related to youth league fees. All those in favor, please state aye. Great, thank you. If you just come forward and state your name and other identifying information. Hold on a second. We got Mayor Pro Tem, just a second here.
Well,
Hold on.
they're on the delete list.
They're on the add delete list.
Yeah. I thought it would be good for, instead of me giving my same sermon.
I've got no phone calls from
this-
Oakland Tunes.
This is the fourth time I think this is presented to council. We voted it down 3 times, and I thought it would be good for us to hear from those that will be directly impacted on this issue. And this is Richard Bryant with the District 8 Little League.
Good morning,
Morning.
council and mayor. Yes, I'm with District 8 Little League. Little League is a nonprofit organization. Most of our leagues raise their funds through registration, and they do, most of the teams on the north side of town maintain their own fields by the funds they raise. I mean, they don't ask the city for hardly anything. The city comes in once a year and grades the fields out. But as far as improvements, the leagues basically take care of themselves. I know Pioneer this year is going to put out $10,000 to cover their batting cages. And by putting this fee in of $100, it's going to cost my leagues on the south side of town to fold up. They can't afford it. You know, yes, the city helps them out when they can down there, but the south side of town is the ones that will suffer the most. Most of those leagues down there owe Little League right now, and they function from year to year. And by putting this fee on them, all they're going to do on the north side of town is put it off onto the parents. The parents normally right now, for a family of 3, costs right around $600 to play Little League. So it's a fee that they can't afford. And I thank you for your time and your consideration in that matter.
Let me ask you, is it Mr. Richard or Richard?
It's Richard Bryant.
Richard Bryant, okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, get a little, because it does come up every year, and it's good to have you here so we can hear firsthand. So what is it per child to play?
It varies at each league. I know
Yeah.
down at Sally, they charge $45 a child. Out at Northern, it's $75 a child, plus your uniform costs.
And then what would they take in total a year? I mean, that league, what would it take in revenue? from fees?
Northern usually budgets about $100,000 a year.
Okay.
And out of that $100,000, they'll usually spend anywhere from $15,000 to $25,000 on field improvements.
And then in concessions, what's that used for? Is that for scholarships, or what do you use concession fees for? And
Well,
how much is
that
that?
basically it helps bring in the income to pay for the umpires that they use. You know, Little League's policy is that no child is turned away. And you have a lot of leagues that their parents can't pay. So the league has to pick up the uniform cost and the registration fee.
So the the cost per child was $45.
On the south side
some,
of town. And it's more on the north side of town.
Right, okay. And I know they were saying that they, our staff, when they were brought it up, $100 per team is about $10 per child. Is that about right? I mean,
Yes.
you got 9, 10,
Roughly, yes.
at least 10 folks on a team. So,
And that will be relayed to the parents who's already paying $600 for 3 kids, so it'll go up $30.
$30 and $600. What about the, I think this was at Northern, some of the calls I've gotten, and I know soccer folks are here, and so they can speak to this about, like there was a drainage problem, I think, up at Northern, maybe one of the fields, and they wanted us to come in and generously offered to pay a portion, and then we were going to pay a portion to arrange, because of the drainage issue there, and then there was
There-
the lights, remember the lights, that they
Yeah,
wanted
now
the
I know
lights
when the-
redone, and,
The lights were redone, and the city of Northern worked in conjunction with that. I mean, Northern put up, I think, $5,000 to have the lights redone, and the city put up the rest. And it's like this past year, Northern's put up all new electronic scoreboard, LEDs. At no cost to the city. Northern's built 5 practice fields out there that cost the city nothing.
And they maintain them.
Yes, and they do maintain them.
great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Patty Roper, and thank you for inviting us here today. I would like to also speak on behalf of Little League. With the children that come, that don't have the money to pay, it's passed on to the parents of the other leagues. Also, all the fields are maintained by the leagues themselves. At American, for instance, I know Richard spoke about Northern. At American, they maintain their leagues. They have a softball field, which is behind the Double Church's swimming pool, and then you have the C League, and then you have the A-ball and B-ball, which is all maintained by the league themselves. So they can spend anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 per year to try to maintain these fields for them. Thank you.
Yes, hi.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Councilman. I'm David Miles, the General Manager of Columbus Youth Soccer. I want to special thank a couple councilmen that has allowed us to reach out to them and champion youth sports for our area. It's greatly appreciated. At Columbus Youth Soccer, we have a wonderful partnership with Parks and Rec, and it's greatly, greatly appreciated. They do a fabulous job at our complex, and we try to do for them also. Over the past 2 years, we put in a $10,000 kick wall that I believe you came out for our dedication to Coach Herb Green, $10,000 bathroom renovation with partnership with the city Parks and Rec help. We bought the equipment and they installed for us. Carpet, we do ryegrass, we do sod. We want to do chemicals in the summer for weed treatment. Donated the city a golf cart. We provide a significant amount of revenue, we believe, for the city also. This coming weekend, you'll see about 10,000 visitors for the Georgia State Select Cup in our area. These 10,000 visitors stay about 4,000 hotel nights. It's about 180 teams. These people move to Columbus for this weekend. They buy our gas, they eat in our restaurants, they shop in our stores. For all intent of purposes, they're Columbus residents for this time. And the restaurants and the businesses do appreciate this greatly, as Sports Council does. Our fees, like you asked baseball, our fees run with uniforms from $115 to $150. We do scholarship just like Little League. We try not to turn anyone away. Not only do we scholarship, we have teams that play at a significant discount. We have a partnership with the Girls Inc. program and Boxwood from St. Thomas. Boxwood came to us 3 seasons ago And out on the field, it looked like they were in a karate match. They didn't know how to throw the ball in, knew any soccer. To be honest, our teams almost resented the style of play. We worked with them, provided trainers. CSU steps up, provides trainers. These boys, I'm about to get a little emotional thinking about it. These boys in U12 this season won the championship.
Wow.
They were so proud. One of them stood up with their trophy and said he was the soccer god. If you would have seen where these boys started and where they are now, it was great. The priest from St. Thomas came up to me afterwards and hugged me and thanked me for allowing these young men to play and how it's affected their life more than just soccer. There's no doubt sports help provide the work ethic and the determination that goes to more than just sports. It transitions to life. We're not only teaching teamwork, we're teaching life lessons. We don't want to turn anyone away. Madam Mayor, on your Rubik's Cube, I understand that it's complex. I just ask that you pull our kids off of that Rubik's Cube when you start turning it.
Sure.
Let's not tax our kids. Let's give them every opportunity to play. We also sponsor a developmental team. A young man this weekend, the club paid to take them to a tournament in Peachtree City. A young man with autism. His mother came up to me and thanked me that he had never opened up to any coach except the one he'd been with since he was 6. Being on this developmental team has changed him. The mother, she didn't talk to me about it changed his soccer. She talked about how it's changed his personal life, how he's opening up. That's what I care more about than even the soccer. Right now, my program, the rec program, is trying to sponsor a lighting project. It's a 6-figure lighting project that we're not coming to the city asking for any money. We want to light one of our fields to spread the feed around instead of one area that gets worn out. We have an area of the complex that's not lit. We've not asked for you to put it in your budget. We're working, trying to get some private donations to improve our complex. Not my complex, not your complex, but our complex. Our Select program is trying to get sponsorship to add a turf field. They met with several people in Parks and Rec, trying to meet the right people. This is what we're trying to do to improve the project. We just ask, the same with Little League, that we do have the parents come in with 4 or 5 kids. I've seen them sit and decide which kid is going to play. The little sister telling the younger sister, you play, I played last season. They all play for us. We don't turn them away. But don't let the parents, before they know that, see this extra fee and decide on their own that they can't afford youth sports. Because I truly believe, as I think most of you believe, youth sports is about a lot more than athletics. Thank you.
Absolutely. Sir, what's your name again?
David Miles.
Miles.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the soccer parents was telling me, when we were having this conversation, said that Columbus was the only place they had ever been that they weren't charged for parking. So when they travel around every other county, when they have tournaments, charges for parking, I just wondered if you'd ever thought about that, or how, because people are coming in from out of town, and if that's customary and everybody else is doing it, if that's true.
I've been with my daughter, played select soccer. I've been to many, many tournaments. I've never paid for any parking at a tournament other than a high level tournament like the President's Cup. When we hosted it here several years ago, we sold parking. And we did lose that due to field expansion that was talked about that didn't happen, or we would have hosted that one again. But usually that's only collegiate or higher level,
Yeah. Okay.
from what I've seen.
Okay. We've got a couple of counselors. Counselor Huff.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here. Some of the counselors know how near and dear this is to my heart. But Richard, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Richard and I worked hand in hand from 2005 to 2009. I was president of Sally Little League. Richard has been in the background for years. They always wanted him to be president, but he stayed at vice president and worked more than everybody, I think, at Northern Little League. But he understands what goes on the south side of town. We had long conversations. I'll personally say thank you this morning again. He gave us all that he could give us. They had kids that would leave gloves at the ball field, and the parents would buy them new gloves. And he would gather all the gloves together in a box, and he would send them to Sally or National or Eastern, anybody that needed anything. He helped me with the method that we were using to buy for our concession stands because we were spending too much money. And he showed us how he could help us and buy in bulk so that we could make a little bit more on the concessions. It's been brought up this morning about the different fees and things, and it really can't be afforded on the south side at all. We have registration to start the year and the uniform cost. And we make a decision at the beginning of that year, of that registration period, to not turn away any kids and to go out into the community and raise funds to try to have these kids play ball. And I personally come out of my pocket to pay for kids to play. My first year, I didn't quite understand the concept of how registration and the uniforms and things. I had this crazy notion of trying to get the kids to play for half of what they had paid to play for in the past. And I ended up spending a great deal of money out of my pocket the first year. The registration covers registration. There are fees you send off to Little League. Some of that money can be used for umpires. The uniform cost is the uniform cost. No extra charge on that. The concessions are used to try and offset what needs to be taken care of as far as umpires are paid usually weekly. We've had the city and city manager knows firsthand, and the mayor pro tem knows firsthand also, that the city comes out to take care of all of the fields on the south side. We have no extra funds to do anything. So we are totally dependent on the city to keep the fields up. They drag the fields daily during the week. They come in on Fridays and drag for the weekend, and then we do the best we can to get through the weekend. Richard and others have sent down Quick Dry in the past to try to help us get certain games when it rains just a little bit. If you have the Quick Dry, you put it down, spread it out, fields are ready, in an hour or so to play on. We didn't have that, so we had some cancellations from time to time. Our seasons usually lasted 2 weeks longer. I think Northern would finish right before the Memorial Day break. We would play into June because we wanted to keep the kids busy and out of trouble. It's such a passion, such a passion. It's hard to explain if you hadn't been there that $10 is not affordable. $5 is not affordable. I had one parent that had 3 kids that were adopted that she was raising, and they had that issue one year, and they wanted to pull one child from playing because of money. So we went in and bought uniforms, paid for everything, and took care of that. It's something, like David said, it makes me emotional at times. We've had, probably since that time period, a few kids to get college degrees. We've had a couple of kids drafted. We had one kid last year that was drafted by the Braves. He's in AA ball, I think, this year. But it makes a difference as far as crime prevention, as far as keeping them active, keeping them off the street. these people have the information. They know exactly what goes on. They're in the trenches, and you would be surprised at the latchkey kids that jump on a bicycle and ride down to the park and say, I want to play baseball, I want to play soccer, I would love to participate. Where are your parents? At work. I'll get them here as soon as I can, but I'd really like to play. So they are faced with the same thing I was faced with, trying to get these kids in and playing, and believe it or not, that same kid on the bicycle, backpack, uniform, never missed a game. Never missed a game. The parents came when they could be there because they were single parents trying to raise their family. So these kids had a lot of responsibilities at the ages of 9, 10, 11, trying to attend school. We were trying to get tutors to get them through and everything. So I'll cut it at this point by saying District 8 has always had meetings, and Northern, American, and Pioneer have always opened up to us to help on the south side. Sally, Eastern, and National on the south side, to my understanding this year, Richard and others have worked with them to try to consolidate in order to save National Little League. National Little League was down to 3 teams when I left in 2009. And the only reason I left was to be right here where I am now. I left Little League Baseball to run for council. And that's the only thing that took me off the field. But they have, my understanding is, tried to consolidate to save everybody. We also we played in the past with Chattahoochee and Harris County. So in order for Northern American and Pioneer have so many teams that they play within their leagues all year long, within their complex. Sally, Eastern, and National and Chattahoochee had to arrange games between the 4 of us in order for all of us to survive through the Little League season to get down to city playoffs, all-stars, and these things. So, you know, whatever we do, let's find a better way, because the fees will basically all but eliminate most of the south side if it's increased. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Councilor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to make a couple more points in discussing this. The Columbus Youth Football couldn't be here today, but they told me that they have personally expended about $17,000 at the Britt David Park football field. They went in and crowned the field so the drainage would be better. Now, they also told me that since that time, one of the high schools, I believe, teams have been playing on that field and have disrupted some of that investment that they've made in that. Also, as far as, like Councilor Huff said, Northern Little League took a net, I believe it was, Mr. Bryant, took a batting cage net to one of the, was it Sally?
It was National.
National League, donated it to them, but could not get city staff to help install the net for them to be able to have batting practice there. But I just wanted you to understand the type of give. I mean, there's equipment donated from the northern teams to Sally, National, and Eastern. There are uniforms donated. They do a lot of things that go unrecognized and not looking for any accolades for it. They've been doing it when I was in Councilor Henderson were at Pioneer Little League. We've been doing it that long. It was instilled in the operation, and we carried it forward when we were there. And I believe Mr. Miles mentioned that there was a lawnmower that they wanted to buy at soccer to give to the city to allow the city to use that lawnmower to maintain the fields. But the response was, well, we can't guarantee that that lawnmower would only be used at soccer, that we would take it and utilize it at other areas. Well, they were going to buy the $15,000 lawnmower, and they decided to pull back on that because they wanted it dedicated to the soccer complex. So those are there's just thousands and thousands of dollars that are spent maintaining the field. I would venture, and I'll do my best to gather the numbers and share it with council at a later date during this budget discussion, but I would venture to say the investment by the leagues, by baseball, soccer, and football, far exceed annually the $60,000 that the city is looking for out of these unnecessary fees, in my opinion. I know Seth Brown's here. He was past president, I believe, in youth football. So he can certainly, if you'd like to say anything, Seth, I'm sure the council would welcome it. But
I just wanted to make one quick correction. It was River City Youth Football instead of Columbus Youth Football.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I don't want my board to get upset with me. We, on average, spend about $20,000 a year on the facilities, but we're a blessed organization. Councilor Allen and I have talked several times. My fear is not that River City will suffer, it's that the South Side leagues that we work with a lot are the ones that will suffer. My parents can handle this amount. It would be easy. And we scholarship about 20 kids a year. We want to do more, but people are very hesitant to come forward and ask for a scholarship. They get embarrassed by it, and so they don't even ask. I pay for 2 or 3 kids a year myself. Our fees are $150 to play. Of that, about $60 goes toward uniform. But unlike a lot of other sports, and I know baseball can be expensive, but football, my kid, about every season, it's about $500 because he has to get a new helmet every year because you don't want to use a helmet year after year after year. Use one time and get rid of it. Smart parents do. I'm not trying to be ugly. I'm just saying that's a high risk. Shoulder pads are anywhere from $50 to $150, and my son now is an adult shoulder pads, and they're $250. So it's more expensive as they get older. So every season, like I said, it's about $500. So we can afford this, but I'm afraid that, like I said, the South Side and East Side Columbus will be affected dramatically by it. And our fields are used by, like Councilor Harris said, Columbus High uses our field for lacrosse and destroys it every year. CSU club team plays football on our field. It's not our field, but the field that we maintain. Also, we have other activities there too, which we're fine to share it. And Carson and I talk all the time. They do maintain as far as cutting and stuff, but we line it and we also refurbish it every year. As Councilor Allen said, the past 2 years we've spent over $32,000 in recrowning and resodding the field. So.
And in addition to that, I think the donation of equipment to the South Columbus field or the other leagues
We
that need.
do that. We don't donate helmets because there's an insurance risk there. That's just something our attorneys have told us not to do. But shoulder pads. We do a shoe swap and pant swap and all kinds of stuff. Basically, if you need it, you just come up and grab it and take it. We don't ask any questions. We just don't do helmets anymore because of the liability risk.
And just to be clear, there is a River City football, which
Yes,
is
sir.
on the list, and a Columbus Youth football.
Yes, sir. They're two separate organizations.
Two different leagues of football. So
River
that's
City has
what-
no boundaries, whereas
Right.
Columbus Youth Football has sectors of the city where if you live in this sector, you play for this team. If you live in whereas River City is all-encompassing. It's just everybody.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your time coming. Mr. Mills, Mr. Bryant, Ms. Roper, thank you so much. And Seth, thank you for coming up and saying.
Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it. All right. Mr. City Manager, we're going to turn over to your agenda. I'm going to ask if our folks with IT can come over. My screen is down, so I can't call the vote. So either that has to be brought up, or somebody needs to bring me a paper agenda, if y'all will, please. Mr. City Manager.
Madam Mayor, thank you. And Councilor Allen, let me just say to your couple of notes that net was donated, but the city would not install, and a lawnmower valued at $15,000 was going to be donated with restriction that it be used at the soccer complex only. I'm not aware of those, but I do intend to look into and find out about those things. Typically, if someone's trying to do something like that and they are getting a response from staff that they think should be smarter and they're not getting it, it would normally come to my attention and I can get involved in that. And unfortunately, these items did not come to my attention, and I'm interested in what was ask of us in terms of the net being installed after being donated. I'm interested in why we would turn down a mower valued at $15,000 that could be used at the soccer complex. So that gets my attention, and I want you to know and others to know that I intend to find out what happened there.
Well, I appreciate that, and my intention wasn't to embarrass you. My intention, when I started calling the league presidents and Mr. Bryan and Scott Stacy as the soccer president, he referred me to Mr. Miles that was here today. But that information came out in those discussions about the fees and why would the city want to do this and that kind of thing when we're doing these things. So that's how it came up. Certainly, if I'd have known about it beforehand, when it was actually offered on both occasions, the net and the lawnmower, I would have called you and
Sure.
said, we need to look in this a little closer because it could save us some significant
Yeah.
funding. But I do know that the soccer complex, I think Mr. Mills covered it, they donated, I think, $10,000 on renovating the restrooms there at the complex.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's been a good partnership. It's just, you can only get so much out of things like that. And I think it's just an overreach on the council's part. Somebody mentioned that this was similar to the Boston Tea Party. There was such an uproar, everybody pulled back. And we all know that have worked in government any length of time, when you start a fee, it never goes away. It only increases. And it really concerns me that we're even discussing this again. But anyway, I appreciate you looking into that, and I'd love to hear what you find out.
Sure.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, with that, first on my agenda, I'm requesting approval to grant an easement for use, access, and construction to Georgia Power Company.
We've got a motion and a second to approve the Georgia Power easement at 3808 Rosemont Drive. Seeing no discussion, I believe you are queued for electronic voting. And it passes.
I've got a request to enter into a rural fire defense cooperative lease agreement and MOU, which will allow the City of Columbus to be able to obtain specialized brush and wildland firefighting equipment.
We've got a motion and second for approval related to the Rural Fire Defense Cooperative Lease Agreement and Memorandum of Understanding. Is there any discussion related to this? Seeing none, I believe you are queued for voting. And it looks like we need one more. There we go. And it does pass.
Got a street acceptance.
We've got a motion and a second for the street acceptance on Thresh Drive, Nahatch Drive, or Court, and that portion of Wren Creek Drive located in Section 2 of Wrenwood. It appears there's no discussion, and you are queued for electronic voting. It passes.
Got a juvenile justice delinquency and prevention family drug court implementation grant at $600,000.
Got a motion and second for approval. There appears to be no discussion, and it is queued for electronic voting. Okay, that one passes, and we've got a motion from Councilor Davis to accept the FY17 Family Connection Grant. Is there a second? And there appears to be no discussion. It is queued for electronic voting. Yeah, passes.
Got another grant with no match required. It's in the amount of $975,000. It's Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration grant.
We've got a motion and second for approval of the Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Grant. There appears to be no discussion, and it is queued for electronic voting. It does pass.
Got another grant with a 10% match requirement. It's in the amount of $396,753.
We've got a motion from Councilor Davis, a second for Councilor Huff, to approve the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council grant. There appears to be no discussion. Please record your votes electronically. All right, and it does pass.
Madam Mayor, this is an add-on. It was discussed at the budget meeting, our last budget meeting. It's a resolution authorizing each sworn officer in the Columbus Police Department to receive a one-time bonus of $1,500 from those sworn officers on payroll, for those sworn officers on payroll as of January 1, 2016.
Got a motion and second for approval. We have discussion. Councilor Thomas.
Mr. City Manager, as I recall, this was originally given to us as a $1,200 bonus, and it's now up to $1,500 because of additional salary savings. Is that, am I remembering that correctly?
That is correct.
Are there other departments, particularly in our public safety area, that would have salary savings that might also have a bonus of this type? It seems that we're, well, that's my question. Are there others?
And just without looking, I would say no. This is possible because of the vacancy rate that we've had in the Columbus Police Department. We do not have that kind of vacancy rate in other public safety departments, such as the sheriff and such as the marshal's office. And so because of the CPD's vacancy rate, we're able to bring this to you, and the value of this is $641,000, and that's because of the vacancies that they've had.
So there may be, and Pam might be able to speak to this, what's a typical salary savings for another public safety? I mean, it wouldn't be to this magnitude that could fund even a $300,
There's just
$200.
no way, because they just don't have that kind of vacancy rate.
Yeah. Pam, give us a sense of the vacancy rate in other departments, particularly public safety.
The one that I can think of off the top of my head is the fire department, and they have a much lower vacancy rate, and their salary savings is around $300,000 so far this year, and some of that has been requested for the burn tower, additional work at the burn tower. So there has been some salary savings in the fire department. In the sheriff and the marshal, they do not have substantial vacancy rates at all, so I don't believe their salary savings would be anywhere close to even $100,000.
So usually when they have salary savings, they come forward and ask council
Make a
for
request.
capital or whatever, and in this instance, it was for a bonus.
That's correct.
And I think we have been we have very jealously guarded those salary savings in the past and have not necessarily spent them on things like this. My only concern, and I certainly am going to vote in favor of this, is that I do not want the employees in the other public safety departments to get the wrong idea, quite frankly, because the police department is the only one getting a bonus. And so I did want to have, one more time, explained where this money came from and why it is being used in this situation and not in the other departments.
Mm-hmm.
And part of the discussion, too, for this particular department receiving a bonus of this type was because of the number of vacancies and the requirement on the existing officers to fill all those gaps for all those vacant positions as well.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, and we have the Mayor Pro Tem.
One of the things I was going to say, we have to also remember that in the sheriff's department, they receive gap pay, whereas in the police department, they don't.
That's true.
And that's a good point.
That's true. And that's about $1,200. We got that information last year, but it's about $1,200 on average for those who receive it. Okay. All right. It appears there's no further discussion on this item. I will cue it to vote. You may record your votes electronically. And it passes.
We've got a few purchases. The first is procurement card services, RFP. We're asking council to authorize the execution of an annual contract with Synovus Columbus Bank and Trust for a credit card program for small dollar procurements under $1,000 and travel purposes.
Got a motion and second for approval. We have discussion by Counselor Davis.
We can go ahead and
Oh,
follow it through,
okay.
Mayor, now.
All right. There being no further discussion, it is queued for voting. And it passes.
Mr. City Manager, on this matter here, pertaining to the procurement card, it just brings to my mind that I think there was a law passed this year, the state legislature. I'm not sure how it's going to affect this matter, but I believe it does pertain to these cards and certain employees or officials and how they're
Elected
able to use
officials.
these cards. I don't know how that's going to change the policies and procedures of our government, but I am concerned what I know on the surface. I don't know if you'll be coming back or that we'll have a discussion on this very subject, but I believe there was a law that was passed that pertains to this.
Well, I believe you're talking about the law as it relates to elected officials. I believe that's the one I'm familiar with, and has nothing to do with non-elected officials, but for certain elected officials, there was not initiated by this city or county, but from problems people were having in other counties. There was legislation that I know the city attorney is aware of as it relates to elected officials, and certainly we're going to be guided by that legislation regarding those certain elected officials that, again, we had nothing to do with here in Muskogee County. But most of this, the use of procurement cards, come with non-elected officials.
Right. I do think you probably share my same concerns based on past history dealing with these cards, that there needs to be, we need to have the assurance that the policies and procedures are still somehow, I don't know how it's changing, but I need to understand it as well as the rest of the council.
Well, and we can send you something, but the deputy city manager is telling me that back in December, we updated the policies and council did take a vote on that. So,
Yeah, Pam, why don't you just update us? It's hard to remember with all
We
that
did
comes
bring
through
the
here.
policies to council in December, and those were updated, and I'll be happy to provide just a summary information for council.
Yeah, why don't you put it in our packs or whatever memo it was, if there was something, just get it to everybody to update us. But the law did change. I think there was some pretty gross abuse in some of these communities, and so the state legislature passed a law and we made some decisions.
yeah. So we'll get something to you, Counselor, to all of you. Okay. With that, moving on to B on the purchases.
Did we take a vote on A?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
It's Internet Services RFP. We're asking council to authorize the execution of an annual contract with WOW.
Got a motion and a second for approval. It appears there's no discussion. Wait, hold on a second. It's now queued to vote. One more, I think. Yeah, there we go. It passes.
And C would be Pool Chemicals RFP. It's for,
Got a motion and second for approval. It appears there's no discussion. It's queued for voting. Thank you. It does pass.
and the last purchase item is Building Ethernet wiring services. IT often need assistance in wiring to the various city buildings on an as-needed basis.
Motion and second for approval. There is no discussion, and it's queued for voting.
And I've got one very brief update on Claflin, the Claflin building. You know that we signed an agreement with the Friends of Claflin. We have them on a timeline to bring that building up to standard. They presented to us that it would cost some $10 million to get that done. We entered an agreement with them for a 3-year period. I want to give you periodic updates so that you know how they are progressing within that window of time, how they're fundraising within that window of time, so that we can stay on track and on course as it relates to Claflin. And so Laura McCoo Johnson is here, and she's going to give a brief update on Claflin.
Good morning.
And let me just say, I believe the Friends of Claflin were notified. They were invited to be here because we want to always give them an opportunity to speak when we provide these updates. And so
I
with
did
that-
hear from Reverend Jesse a few minutes ago. They had a public hearing this morning, or a press release. I'm not sure if he was going to try to attend or not,
Okay,
but
thank
I
you.
did hear from him a few minutes ago. I'm going to go back and just go over the history of what's occurred so far. In January 2013, council accepted Claflin from the school board. The property does have a deed restriction that says it must be used for educational purposes only, and the city had an option to allow the property to revert back to the federal government. At that time, council agreed to allow the city staff 12 months to come up with a plan, and originally it was going to be used as a homeless resource center. Then in August 2013, an RFP was advertised, but there was no submittals, so that the RFP was extended. In May of 2014, council approved retaining ownership for an additional 6 months to determine a plan. The proposal was submitted by the Friends of Historic Claflin in November 2014, and then in February 2015, council approved leasing the building to Friends of Historic Claflin. So the original timeline that was presented to council back then was that in June, by November 24th, they would have developed the RFP, developed a sustainability plan, submitted an application to the Historic Register, form a nonprofit, and establish a board. All of those items have been completed. Then by January 2015, they were to complete the RFP process, apply for a 501c3, and kick off a PR campaign. That also has been completed. The phase 2 of the development, by August 2015, they were to identify and apply for restoration funds and conduct a fundraising campaign. They're currently in the process of doing phase 2 as we speak. Phase 3, by February 2016, stabilization and demolition was to occur, and they were to continue fundraising. They have not started doing any stabilization or demolition on the building, but they are continuing to do fundraising. As of March 2016 is when they were supposed to start the facility restoration, which has not occurred yet. Also, by 2018, they were to have the facility prepared for tenants and for occupation, which was to start in April 2017, but as you can see, they have not started the facility restoration at this time, so I'm not sure if they'll meet the deadline of April 17 to start preparing the facility. And then by September of 2018, that's when they were to start preparing for the grand opening. Wanted to go back and give some pictures of what Claflin currently looks like. This is pictures that were taken back in December when we presented to council, but nothing has been done since then, so this is still the current state of the building. So since we came and updated you on December 8th, the following items have occurred. On December 29th, 2015, we entered into a lease agreement with the Friends of Historic Claflin. The lease has a 10-year term with an option for 2 additional 5-year terms if in full compliance with lease terms, so it's a 20-year total lease. Per the lease requirements, the Claflin has received liability insurance on the building for an annual fee of $33.90 per year, and they pay it in quarterly payments. They've paid the first 2 premiums, and their next installment's due August 2016. January 2016, we came to council to get approval for submitting an application to the Georgia State Historic Preservation Division for $21,000 for environmental testing at the site. Friends of Historic Claflin put the application together. The city did submit the application on time, but the project was not selected for funding. Since then, they've opened a PayPal account and a crowdfunding campaign, which is online fundraising, to begin some fundraising since that time. And they also held their first public meeting on February 3rd, which I believe they have a public meeting every month. They've developed partnerships with the East Highland Neighborhood Improvement Association and Project Rebound. I was informed after this presentation was put together that the East Highland Neighborhood Improvement Association is no longer functioning. They are going to try to kick it back off in June, but as of right now, it's not a functioning agency. They also created a church works committee, and then they had Greater Shady Grove Baptist Church held a Friends of Historic Claflin Sunday on May 22nd, 2016. Also, board members attended a capital fundraising campaign training in Atlanta on March 16th, and they are planning to kick off their first capital fundraising campaign. Some of the Friends of Historic Claflin board appeared on the Dee Armstrong Show to promote their PR campaign reach. They also submitted a second grant application requesting $150,000 from AFLAC for their Peers program on April 1st. And Claflin School was recently highlighted in the May's edition of the Georgia Magazine under Places in Peril. As far as construction is concerned, they did have a walkthrough by general contractors, and they selected Bass & Cook Company as their construction manager for the project. I did some research on Bass & Cook, and they're a development agency out of Atlanta. On March 1st, the construction committee met with Bass & Cook to outline pre-development plans. And as I was saying earlier, GEC is doing the Phase 1 testing today, and they had a kickoff on that this morning. And they're doing that in kind, the Phase 1 testing. So far, as of today, they have $3,004.81 in the bank, and they are expecting an additional $4,000 in pledges. And that's all I have as an update. Any questions?
And I see that Reverend Jesse is here, and I don't know if he wants to make any comments, but we'll certainly answer any questions from council.
Okay, we have Councilor Davis.
City Manager, I just have two. Who is maintaining the property right now? And based on the photos we have, I thought there was supposed to be, the building was supposed to be secured as well.
Okay. Well, let's let.
It is the responsibility of Friends of Historic Claflin per the lease agreement to maintain and secure the building.
And so let us get council questions first before you.
I got it. Okay.
Mayor, I don't know if there are any others.
No others at this time.
Okay. Reverend Jesse, if you'd like to make any comments.
Good morning. We had just left Claflin this morning. This morning we went through the school with the police department to make sure there were no unauthorized tenants there. And we do still have some that are there. So we cleared out the building. Harvey Lumman has donated some material that we can re-secure the building, so we'll be getting that done today. There were some areas that have been vandalized, taken down, some of the boards and everything, but we have the material to re-secure it, and we wanted to make sure that during this process of removing the tenants, and I'm going to be meeting with one of the persons who's been staying over there this afternoon to help him get into a safe place, we will close it up where nobody will be able to get in it. We have started the process of restoration and Phase 1 testing. It's done now. We should get the results from it in a couple of weeks, and we'll be able to start Phase 2 of the testing, and that is identifying the asbestos and the lead paint and all the other toxins. We have permission already to clean the school up. We can go in and remove all of the debris that's in there, and we'll be organizing that in the next couple of weeks to get the school cleaned up. We are still in the process of applying for grants. We have a couple that we are in the process of applying for. We applied for 2 already. Didn't get them, but we have some that the Georgia Department of Natural Resources has said they're going to be working closely with us so that we can do that. We have been starting we're in the process of starting a capital fundraising campaign, and in a couple of months we'll be able to kick that off. So Before the end of this year, we are still planning to have cleaned up the school. We'll be able to know what we need to do the demolition work, and want to get that done. We want to ask the community and even our leaders, if you would contribute to this phase of what we're doing. We would appreciate it. And we are in the process of still raising the funds. We're working with Basson Cook and with 2WR, GEC now, and we're just moving forward doing what we need to do this year so that we can put a roof on the school. So.
All right, we have Mayor Pro Tem.
Reverend Jensen, what if somebody wanted to commit to paying $100 a month? What would they do?
Say that again, ma'am.
If somebody wanted to commit to paying $100 a month?
Yes, ma'am. We would appreciate that. I have committed to making a monthly donation. We have a crowdfunding campaign that you can go online and donate. We have PayPal, www.friendsofclaflin.com. We have all the information as far as our fundraising is concerned. Of course, we are 501c3. And when we started this, we wanted to make this a community project. This past Sunday, the Greater Shady Grove Missionary Baptist Church had a Claflin Day, and we were able to raise around $500 just in gifts through that. So we will be going to our churches and other community organizations. We partner with the East Highland Neighborhood Improvement Association, the Greater Chamber of Commerce, a number of other organizations who have looked at what we want to do with the school and are supporting us. And soon, hopefully, we will have a couple of people who will start working full-time on Claflin. I should be the first, and that's why we need folk to give today, and we can go to work. I see a lot that I could be doing that I'm not able to because I got to work, I got to pay my bills. So, but as soon as we have a work agreement with the Friends of Claflin now, that we can start working, and we're just in the process of preserving this school. And I guarantee you this will be something that this city will be very proud of once we finish the restoration process. Thank you, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you. Yes. And Madam Mayor, just an announcement, and then this will conclude my agenda. Just a public meeting announcement. There's a proposed permanent closure of Pope Road at Railroad Crossing. And I know that I had the engineering director to talk to Councilor Allen and make him aware of a public meeting just to go and get the reaction from, I think there may be 3 households on Pope Road. But the meeting will be held on May 26, 2016 at Salmon Road Recreation Center, 6484 Salmon Road. Again, May 26 from 6 p.m. until 7 p.m. May 26, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Salmon Road Recreation Center. And it's a public meeting for the proposed permanent closure of Pope Road at Railroad Crossing. And so when we have these public meetings for things such as this, they are meetings to get the reading from the citizens. We're not going in trying to force necessarily anything on them. We want them to look at what we're proposing and trying to do and agree to it. So we invite whoever's interested to come out to this meeting on May 26, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. at Summer Road Rec Center. Thank you, Madam Mayor. That concludes my agenda.
All right. Thank you. And we'll now turn it over to the Clerk of Council, Ms. Washington.
Madam Mayor and members of council, on the clerk's agenda, items 1 through 4 for the council's information. Item 1 is a memorandum from me regarding the Deferred Compensation Board. Council needs to nominate someone for this volunteer position. 2 and 3.
Wait, hold on a second. We got Mayor Pro Tem.
Nominate them.
Oh, you can go ahead and do it now.
I want to nominate Mr. Tyler Townsend.
Okay. All righty. We'll bring this back for his confirmation. Then items 5, 6, and 7, 8 are resolutions to excuse counselors from.
We've got a motion and second for approval. All those in favor, please state aye.
And also, apologize, item 5, which has already been approved, but this will be changing our regular council meeting schedule. We will be having a regular session on June 7th at 5:30 PM, and our regular June 14th meeting, and then a special call meeting on June the 21st, and our June 28th meeting will be canceled. Item 9 is a letter.
Hold on a second. We've got Counselor Thomas.
I want to just ask a question on the 7th and the 21st. Will those be regular business meetings? We have a regular
That's my
agendas
understanding,
and
is
that
they're
sort of
all
thing?
business meetings. The proclamation session is converted to a business meeting / proclamation session, so the proclamations will occur first, and then that will be followed by the business meeting.
That is correct.
And the hearings for the budget, the taxpayer bill of rights, okay.
Yes.
And then the 14th is a regular meeting, and the 21st will be the 28th meeting moved to the 21st? Is that basically what that is?
Right. Well,
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
And item number 9 is a letter resignation from Mr. Ed James resigning from the Historic and Architectural Review Board. Can I have a motion to receive it?
We've got a motion that it be received with regrets. Is there a second? All those in favor, please state aye.
Minutes of various boards can be received.
We've got a motion and second that the minutes be received. All those in favor, please state aye.
On our board appointments, on the Board of Family and Children Services, Ms. Maddie Wright has resigned. We'll need a replacement for her seat. Okay. And then on our Civic Center Advisory Board.
Let me ask a question. Is Jennifer Melvin also on the Personnel Review Board?
I
No,
believe
okay.
she's
I
off
knew that
now.
name was familiar, so, okay.
Civic Center Advisory Board, Councilor Barnes is working on a replacement for District 1, as well as Councilor Woodson for District 7 and District 9. Also, Councilor Thomas is working. On our Columbus Golf Course Authority, Councilor Barnes is nominating Ms. Stephanie Leor for Ms. Rudine Nelson's seat. Councilor Davis had previously nominated Mr. Ricky Wright, and we will bring this back at our next meeting for a vote. On our Circle Commission, Mr. Pedro Augusto, his seat has been declared vacant. We need a replacement for this seat. On a Community Development Advisory Council, Councilor Davis, Mr. Jack Hayes is not eligible. We'll need a replacement for that seat. As well as for District 8, Mr. Jackie Shahid does not want to serve again, as well as Colin Martin, who represents District 9. On a Convention and Visitors Board, the mayor is renominating Ms. Donna Hicks, as well as Mr. Paul Pierce to succeed themselves.
Got a motion and second for confirmation. All those in favor, please state aye.
Also, she's nominating Ms. Kendra Wright to succeed Ms. Felicia Hamilton.
Got a motion and second for confirmation. All those in favor, please state aye.
And on our Deferred Comp Board, Mayor Pro Tem has nominated Mr. Townsend. We'll bring that back for confirmation at our next meeting. And on our Recreation Advisory Board, Councilor Woodson is working on a replacement for Ms. Tracy Belk. And that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you. That concludes our agenda. We do have a motion for, a request from the city attorney for a short executive session regarding litigation. We've got a motion and a second for executive session. All those in favor, please state aye. Great, thank you. Please clear the chambers. it up. All right, we have just exited an executive session on litigation. No votes were taken. This concludes our business agenda. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All right, that's a motion and second. All those in favor, please state aye. All right, we are adjourned, and we're going to reconvene in just a bit with our budget session. See you in a little bit.